Hi, this is Katie from Crafting Ruby Dreams and welcome to my channel. If you find any of the information in this video useful, I hope you'll hit that like button to let YouTube know that it should recommend it to other people. If you would like to see more videos from me, please hit that subscribe button and the bell in order to be notified when future videos are released. Today I'm going to be talking about my journeys with planning, writing, and budgeting because all three of those are going to help me realize the dreams that I have for my life, and I am here to share my journey with you. So my journey as a planner began back about when I was in high school, because I believe that's when I got my first planner. It was a school issued planner, just a weekly horizontal, write down your class assignments and when they're due and all of that fun stuff. I didn't do much with it except writing down those assignments, sometimes not even then, but I found it useful. And when I got to college, I continued on, again, using a school-issued horizontal weekly, and all I pretty much did with it was write down those class assignments, when they were due, various tests, as well as stuff my dorm was doing, because we were the university I went to was very big on having social events with the dorms, and even though they hated for us to call them dorms, they were residence halls. But that's all. I didn't use it for much more than that. My sophomore year, however, I had the realization when I had back-to-back midterms that I hadn't studied for, because I didn't realize they were coming up. And I only realized the first one was coming up 2 days before, and then happened to check the other classes, where I realized I had 2 more midterms immediately after that, and I had a minor freak out that, oh, I need to have a better understanding as to what's coming up ahead. So I got a monthly desk calendar that I just used ticky-tack. That's the gummy stuff that was really popular in the 90s, still may be popular for all I know, to put it up on the back of my dorm room door. It was useful for me to be able to see that every time I went in and out of that door, to see what was coming up and remind myself. The other thing that I found extremely useful and had this self-realization was that my memory is pretty much spatially based. And so writing down a commitment, an event, whatever, down into a very particular space helps fix that appointment or whatever in my head. And so it's more of a memory trigger for me than anything else. I do frequently refer to my paper planners, but I don't necessarily rely on them to manage my appointments after I've written them down. It's more of a, I have written this down in a particular space, and so I'm more likely to remember it. I primarily use my phone calendar, my digital calendar, for appointments, and with that I get the reminders on my phone when it's coming up. It's like, oh hey, here's yet another reminder. So the combination of having the memory trigger by having written it down in a particular space, as well as just getting the reminder itself from my phone, helps me. I rarely miss appointments, and I'm usually one of those people who arrive early. I'm not naturally someone who arrives early necessarily, but those two things help me be what I want to be. I want to be somebody who is at the very least on time if she can help it. That's college. I pretty much finished the rest of my college, my undergraduate career, with the monthly desk calendar views, as well as my portable weekly planners that I would carry with me to class and everything. My first job out of college, I didn't really rely on a planner because I didn't really need it. The job was fairly stable. I very rarely went out of the office. I didn't really have commitments. I was living at home and didn't really have much of a social life, so I fell out of the habit of using a planner. Got back into it when I went back to grad school, and once again had to pay attention to when papers were due, when the exams were being held, all of that stuff. The other thing I realized while I was in grad school is how much I missed forming a class schedule that worked for me and met my needs and goals. I first got a taste of that when I was in high school and arranged my last semester of senior year so that I would have my last 2 periods I could leave. It's like I didn't have to be there because they were lunch and study hall, and as a senior I could leave. Study hall was first period or 8th period. You could either come late or leave, and if you had 8th period study hall and 7th period lunch, you could leave after 6th period. And so I purposely went into my dean to rearrange my class schedule so that I could get that 8th period study hall and 7th period lunch for my last semester of high school. I then also arranged my class load so that I could have 2 periods of gym, 4th and 5th period, and my 6th period class, I didn't put much effort into it after the first 2 weeks because I didn't suck up to the teacher, but the effort that I put into those that first 2 weeks carried me through the entire semester. So I mentally checked out after 3rd period, my senior year, 2nd semester of high school. But I continued that love of arranging my schedule and to meet what my personal wants and desires were all through college and then all through grad school. So when I could make things happen so that I could have a day off, I did that. And it was, I found out later that the reason I like doing stuff like that is because if you've ever taken the Clifton Strengths Finder from Gallup, there is this strengths thing called strategic, and that my strategic loves doing stuff like that. And it also loves playing with planners because I like looking into the future to a degree and like arranging, like seeing what possible routes can I take to get to this thing in the future and what's going to be the best route. So that's one of the reasons why I like playing with planners and figuring out, okay, so I need to get this done, and so how can I do it? What's the most efficient way for me to do it that is respectful of what my capabilities are at this point in time? I've most frequently, since grad school and the joys of figuring out class schedules, the most frequent reason that I've used calendars was to actually manage my finances as well as I could, and I'll get into that a little bit later. So tracking my paycheck, when bills are due, all of that stuff. And so even when I wasn't really using a planner to manage my time, I was to a degree using it to manage my finances. And I didn't really use it much beyond that. In my first job out of graduate school, I did use a paper planner in my second job out of grad school, which was the job before this one. And because that job was as a consultant, and so there was a lot of stuff that I had to do outside of the office and had to make my way around to the various libraries that I consulted with, continuing education courses that I was teaching. I also had a second job that I had to manage the schedule to work that around my day job. And so I was more reliant on a paper planner. And back then, getting something like a handspring, which was what digital calendars were at that time, was a bit of an investment. And it's like I did have one, but I didn't use it that much. And I lost the memory trigger of having written something in a particular space. I was primarily using monthly calendar layouts at that time, and so what I could get at Staples was pretty much all I really needed. I did have some decorative design stuff, and that worked for me. And then when I moved to DC, which is where I'm currently living, and I got my current job, I didn't have to go out that much. I am almost exclusively in the office when we're in the office, not right now, but I don't have to, my job does not involve travel to the extent that other people in my office have to travel. I have a very routine day job life. But because I'm only working the one job, unlike my previous jobs where I always worked a side job, I have more time to do stuff outside of work. I have time to do the writing. I have time to have a social life. And so I have to manage my time a lot better than I have more of a need to manage my time than I ever have before. So that's one of the reasons why I am just as reliant on my digital calendar, or at least have been, to manage my appointments as I am my paper planners. And in about 2015, I joined a private Facebook group that is about paper planning, specifically for members of the publishing industry. So I have gotten, and it's primarily authors, but I've gotten to know the people in that group really well over the years. A lot of them I knew outside of the group, and quite a few of them I've met and have gotten to know inside the group. They are such lovely people, and it's a joyous thing, and it's a joyous group to be in. We're always looking for ways to spend each other's money, frankly. But that is where I learned, where I got to know Sarah Cannon, who's the creator of the HB90 Method of planning and her HB90 Method. So if you haven't seen Sarah's HB90's YouTube channel, I highly recommend it. I really love it. And I'm a big fan of hers. I have taken her classes. It has been so useful to me since she launched the HB90 Method. I was in, I think, one of her very first classes for it, and I didn't put it to much use in the 2 years after I took the class, but I retook the class when she relaunched it back in June for Q3, which is July, August, September, and it has been so useful to help me do what it is I want to do this summer and get my mind back in the game of pursuing a publication path. So that is my experience, my journey with planning. I currently do have I have multiple paper planners at this point. I use the HB90 method for goal setting and goal tracking and achieving specific goals, and I am having lots of fun with it. So I also started an Instagram account, Crafting Ruby Dreams. If you're at all interested in following along, it's very paper planner and related items that I post over there, but it's something that brings me joy. Okay, so that's my planning journey. Now for my writing journey. I never dreamed of being a writer when I was a little kid. I always told myself stories, but writing and being a writer was not something I was interested in doing. Part of that was because of the handwriting element to it. I hated handwriting. I don't have good memories of that class when I was a kid. I'm a pretty heavy writer. I put a lot of force into my writing, so it becomes painful after a while. When I was 15, I was a sophomore in high school. My mom was very tired of typing up mine and all of my siblings' research papers, so she made me take a keyboarding class that year. And I'm so glad she did, because being a touch typist has been so beneficial for me in my career, and I am just really thankful that my mom basically made me take that class. That was in that same year, actually. That same year, my English teacher asked me to expand a project I had done for class to, it was basically a fan fiction script of Quantum Leap. And it was, I forget what the exact assignment was, but she encouraged us to be creative, so I did my very first fan fiction, one of my only ever fan fiction pieces, and it was a script. She asked later if I would expand it out to a 30-minute script so that she could submit it to a contest. I ended up declining because that would have meant more writing, and I also really didn't have an idea as to what 30 minutes meant for a script, especially a handwritten one. I still don't quite regret that decision because it was what I knew at the time. And the one thing I regret about it is not taking the opportunity to learn the revision process, because that will come into play later. But with the handwriting element, I was like, no, thank you. But the fact that my teacher wanted to have me expand a class project so she could submit it to a contest because she just believed in it enough, that stuck with me. And that was so, it still makes me smile and feel good. However many years later, I'm not gonna even say it. It's been a lot, but it still makes me smile. That was when I was 15. The next milestone in my writing career happened when I was 19. I was a sophomore in college, actually. So 4 years later, I'm in an anthropology class, frankly, and my teacher comes in and just, make the story short, but she ends this thing with pointing at me and telling me that I should write fiction one day, because she knew I was a huge fiction reader. This was like the third semester I'd had her. And she just knew what a big fiction reader I was and how important it was in my life. And she had no reason at all, to think that I could write fiction. But because of what started this particular episode and her knowledge of me as a fiction consumer, she thought I could make some money at it one day. I have made some money since then, but it's like it hasn't been enough for it to be a full-blown career. But again, that statement, along with what my sophomore year English and my high school sophomore year English teacher had said to me, again, both of those things stuck with me. So that the following summer, when I was 20 and sitting in my summer job doing data entry, bored out of my mind, and I was just, I wasn't done for the day, but I was done for the day. I pulled out a legal pad of paper and I began writing. And I was just writing with pencil. I was writing longhand on a legal pad of paper with pencil. And let's see, this is, God, there's a college. This is the start of my first book, my first attempt at a novel. It's not done because it's just, it's this many pages. This is all stuff from like college, but this many pages. I wrote like 60 legal size pages of a novel, which I never ever imagined I would do. And obviously I still have it because it means something to me. It's part of my history, and it will never see the light of day. What you just saw is the most it's ever going to be shown for public consumption. But it is something I'm very proud of because it was my first step down the road of writing fiction. I stuck with writing that, pretty much trying to write it through the rest of college. And because I like those 60 pages, that took me 2 years. 2 years of writing. I would show it to friends periodically, and they liked it. I think because none of them had ever tried to write a novel before, and so to see somebody writing a novel was like cool. I literally wrote myself into a corner in that story and couldn't figure my way out of it. And a couple years later, I decided to, like, okay, there's no way that I'm ever going to finish that book, but let's try another book. So I started writing a second novel, and I did finish that one about 14 months later after starting it. I submitted that I pitched it at a conference to an editor. She said, yes, I'd love to see it. I sent it in. I received a rejection, but it was a good rejection. I knew that thanks to some message boards I was on with other romance readers, and there were a couple of authors who were also active on that board. So I knew that was a good rejection. I sent that letter, or I typed it out to send it to one of my friends from that board who was a published author, and said, this is what she said. Can you translate it for me? And she did. And she basically said, you had better revise that book and you send it into the other arm of the company that she's not explicitly, but strongly implying, suggesting that you do. I didn't, because of that lack of knowledge of the revision process. Again, I don't regret it because I don't know what that career would have been like for me. I was because I was writing category romance at that point because I didn't know any better. That's a lot of what I was reading. And in romance, there at that time was a strong idea of, well, you get started by publishing with Harlequin and Silhouette. That's actually not the right path for everybody. It's not the presumed path these days anymore by any means, but it was then, and I'm kind of glad it didn't work out because I don't think it would have been right for me. I continued writing. I eventually was published by some digital presses starting about 2005, 2006, so 14 years ago. And I continued on that path for a while until I did self-publishing in 2015 by publishing 3 volumes of my backlist that I had already published and gotten the rights back to, as well as deciding to move forward with original work. I did that up until last year, and contemporary romance is what I've been writing, and it has been good to me. I've learned a lot about myself as a writer. I've learned about myself as a business person, and I have learned a lot about myself as a person and how I want to spend my time and what I am willing to give up to make this happen. So all of that came together, and I decided I need to put the romance writing career on hold for a while. I need to basically probably retire the pen name that I've been writing under for the last 14 years. And if I go back to romance writing, I'll make a decision at that point as to whether or not to revive that pen name or to create another pen name. Moving forward, I am going to be writing historical fiction, and I fully expect to publish under a different name. I have that name already picked out, and fingers crossed I can do it, but we'll see when I am ready to sell that book. I'm currently working on the book that I am going to be shopping out to agents. I'm hoping to finish that at the end of this calendar year and start sending it out to agents for consideration at the beginning of 2021. So that's my writing journey so far. My budgeting journey has been interesting. I mentioned before that I would primarily use my paper planners as a way to track my paychecks and when bills were due and what bills were paid and everything. I have found that is not enough for me in terms of managing my finances and having a good relationship with money. I have not always had a good relationship with money. I am very much a stress-related emotional spender. I have been very lucky and very, very privileged in that my parents, they're still together. and they were always able to provide a roof over our heads, and they were always able to provide food on the table. But they fought a lot about money when I was a real little kid, and I overheard, I was the oldest, so I overheard a lot of their arguments unintentionally. They always tried to not air out the dirty laundry in front of the kids, and so there was a lot of stuff that I overheard. My dad relates a story that I don't particularly remember. It's like there's a lot of stuff that I remember from when I was a real little kid, and I think that this wasn't necessarily as traumatic to stick the memory in my head, but I do have flashes of memory about this happening. How much of that is due to my dad telling the story over and over again, I don't know, but he likes to relate the story of how I was about 5 years old and answered the door one day to a stranger who turned out to be an IRS agent, and when Dad came to the door behind me while I was still standing there, he threatened to take the house away from us. So I think that is a specific cause for a fight between my parents about money that I do specifically remember, and that's more of the trauma edge to the memory. So I think I always connected money with stress, and the way it played out for me is when I get stressed, I like to spend money. Whether or not I have that money is a whole different ball of wax. I have at times been good with managing my money, but it's generally feast or famine. It's like I'm either really strict with myself about my spending, or I spend way too freely. And when I was in college, my last semester, I spent studying abroad, and the disconnect between pounds and dollars, because I was in England, I knew but didn't fully internalize, and so I was a lot freer with my money than I should have been. And I was always, I hated denying myself, especially when it came to travel. I love traveling. It is a passion of mine. I look forward to doing it again when it's safe to do so. But if I had the opportunity to travel, I took it. And I paid very little attention to how much it was costing me. And I ran up my credit card debt for the first time ever. I knew going into college to beware of credit card debt, and I was so good. I was so good about that. And then I ran off the rails my last semester of college when I was studying abroad in England, and then traveling around Europe and other parts of the British Isles. So yeah, fun times. And then my first job out of college, I tried to pay everything off at once and never left any money for myself to do things with. So I would like pay almost my entire paycheck to the credit card, and because I had nothing left, I would put stuff back on the credit card. So yeah, it was just a very vicious cycle. And I spent a lot of time digging myself out of, or at least trying to dig myself out of debt, and it became overwhelming and caused some mental health issues. And I was very lucky with this job in that I really do only need to work with one job, but the last few years I've been feeling a lot of emotional stress for various reasons, and dug myself right back deep into the credit card debt hole that I am taking steps to dig myself out of, and I have made those initial steps happen. So we will see how that goes this time around. But I am back to okay, I need to cut back on the spending, and just, this is an opportunity to do so. I'm not going anywhere. I did a lot of emotional spending when the pandemic started, and just was ordering a lot of stuff. So I am cutting myself off. I am being very strict with myself as to how much I can spend in a week, and preferably nothing. And then rewarding myself with a small amount of money to do fun things with, like buying washi tape, or buying a new planner, or buying stickers or anything like a new album, stuff like that. Things that I find fun and useful and do make use of in my life. So that's my budgeting journey so far. I will be sharing more as we go, and just to give you an update as to how things are going and how I'm feeling. And because this is also an accountability thing for me, I have a group that I do that with where I'm more specific with things, and that's a private group. But like, I think knowing that other people are out there sharing aspects of your journey can help. And I look forward to sharing that with you. I will also be talking more about money and the publishing life, and because that is something else that I feel extremely passionate about, making sure people understand what money is like in publishing, and at least my experiences with it, because it is important to go in with your eyes wide open. Writing's one thing. I hope you'll write no matter what. If it brings you joy and releases that creativity inside of you, I hope you write no matter what. Publishing is business. Publishing is very different from writing. And if you are writing solely for publishing, that's one thing. You can make money at it. You can make very good money at it. But it's also knowing your audience and all of that I'll be getting into more videos. But yes, so those are my planning journey, my writing journeys, and my budgeting journeys, my finance journeys so far. I hope you'll join me as I continue on. Hit that subscribe button and the bell to get notified when future videos are available. If you have found anything useful in this video, please hit that like button so that YouTube knows to recommend it to others. And if you have any ideas for future videos, please leave a comment. Thank you so much, and may all your dreams be Ruby dreams. Have a great day.